what are they really? I know their name is anti-fascist. Do they only go after fascists, or do they go after anybody, say, in the global economic community they don't like?
No, they are strictly principled anti-fascists. And what they see in the Trump administration and what they see happening in this country, they see the neo-fascism that we see. And they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up. I'd like to point out that Antifa at Charlottesville protected peaceful protesters. I don't know what President Trump was talking about.
Well, who were waving the clubs on that side? I mean, I looked at the pictures. There people were jumping
themselves.
In. Well, there was one group that was jumping in and punching the Nazi types. I've seen pictures from. I've seen a lot of pictures like you have, and I've seen people reaching and then slugging them. Who were those people?
They may have been part of Antifa. Antifa is not a nonviolent group, so let me just say that. And the Southern Poverty Law Center certainly prefers and promotes nonviolent protests. But I do want to point out that there's no moral equivalency between white supremacists, white nationalists, and Antifa.
I'm with you on that. Let me ask you about this use of the term fascist. I remember in grad school, way back in the 60s, I first heard somebody refer to a fascist as a business, anybody working in the administration at the time, anybody working for Johnson. Anybody working in the government, any business person was a fascist. How loose a term is that for the Antifa people?
They're very serious about it. It's an
no, but I know they're serious subjectively, but how wide a sweep do they say fascist? Do they mean Mussolini people?
Oh.
Who do they mean?
No, I believe
anybody they don't like?
I believe that they're referring to anti-democracy and kind of a rabid nationalism that we see that's growing in this country.
I thought they're opposed to globalization as well.
I couldn't say. I'm not an expert on Antifas.
Okay, let me go to Brian. Brian, let me ask you about Antifa. I mean, anti-fascist is a great word because we're against fascism. Is that what they mean? If that's what they mean, fine. If that's what they mean.
Yes. They do, but I'm going to diverge here.
Well, don't diverge yet. I want you to explain who Antifa is, because Trump's calling them the moral equivalent of neo-Nazis and KKK members. Put that in perspective. What is their method? What is their cause? Antifa.
There is no moral equivalency, and their cause is standing up to the bigotry and fascism that they see from white nationalists. And they are somewhat diverse. But as someone who had his life at risk and protected a Klansman from a mob of these folks, I can tell you that there is an offshoot that is violent and should be condemned. However, when we see these protests, most of the counter-protests are peaceful. Most of the Antifa people are peaceful. However, to be sure, there is a sliver that is violent and is looking to bash heads, and they should be condemned. But there's no moral equivalency between Nazis and white nationalists and a broad diversity of counter-protesters, which include a sliver of violent people.
Chris, let me also say, because I think it has to be said, that Antifa would not be there if it weren't for the white supremacists calling that
So
rally,
Antifa never goes to, Antifa doesn't engage in Occupy-type behavior against global meetings, for example, business leaders. They don't go after institutions that are not fascist.
They were in Charlottesville to stand against white supremacists.
In other examples,
but that's not what we're talking about, Chris.
No,
I mean,
I'm talking about this. I want to know who these people are.
I understand, but when you do that, you feed into the false narrative that
by trying to find out who everybody is? How does information work into a false narrative? I'm trying to get the truth here.
We gave you information about who they are and what they believe in.
Well, let's get the two issues here. Point of view. Obviously, Nazis are not equivalent to anybody else in terms of cause. They support racism and all the rest of it. But in terms of